Hi and welcome to Quilt Monkey. In today's show we are going to be looking at pre-cuts, and in particular these 10-inch squares that most manufacturers produce these days and that Lecien call the Origami square. These are a really useful way of addressing all of the fabrics in a particular collection but without buying bigger cuts. So it's a great way to get a good variety of fabrics, especially if you particularly like one collection. They're all there, and a lot of the time you get multiples. So in this particular set, which is the Modern Garden, you get 2 or 3 of each fabric. So that's pretty handy. You get 42 squares in total with multiples of some of them. This is the warm colour set, so it's kind of pinks and purples, pretty girly colours. And then we've also got the same collection, but in the cool colour set, which is more your blues, greys and greens. So it's a nice way to kind of mix up the two. If you have both sets, you've got the full collection. When you start with a new set, doesn't matter whether it's a manufacturer that you've used previously or if it's one that is completely new to you, the first thing that I always do is measure my 10-inch square, just to make sure that I know whether it's a good 10 inches or a more scant 10 inches. And then if I'm going to be using other fabrics that I've cut myself, or I'm maybe mixing manufacturers, then I know where to adjust my seam allowance. Because obviously you've got these pinked edges, and if we measure this one, we can see that it's a good 10 and a bit if we go point to point. So the very, very edges of the pinked edge. You're going to have to adjust your seam allowance to make sure that you consider the edge of the fabric where the dip is. So where the little pink edge goes in rather than going right to the edge. All manufacturers are different, and sometimes different packs can be slightly different. So just same as if you were setting off sewing with your machine, you just double check your 1/4 inch seam allowance is working on your machine, that your needle's sharp, that your thread's the correct tension. It's just another one of those little checks to make sure that you know exactly how big your 10-inch square is. And then when you cut your fabrics, you can also take that into account. We've looked a little bit before at different pre-cuts, and we concentrated before on the sushi rolls, but today we're going to see what we can do with these 10-inch squares. The most obvious and simplest way is to sew them together as squares. So the quilt behind me is just rows and rows and rows of 10-inch squares. And then what I've done, just to add a little bit of variety, is cut some petal shapes out again of the 10-inch squares and then fused those on with a fusible web, stitched around them just a raw edge applique, and I've got a pretty effective but very simple, very quick and easy quilt just by sewing the squares together. We're going to concentrate on a few more advanced or a few more interesting techniques today using our squares. So go and grab yourself an origami set and let's get cracking.